Paul and George. Are they there? Rose, Paul, and George?
Yes, we are.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is the weather station at the headwaters of the Great Brook.
Okay.
What can you tell?
Over to me.
Yes, go ahead.
George Springston had an idea for a grant and wrote the grant and then passed it by the Conservation Commission for us to submit it. And we approved that unanimously on January 15th. And we're asking the select board for a letter of support, which we did draft for you. We gave it to Carl. So this grant would be for $1,200 and change. It would purchase a continuous recording weather station, and most importantly, a continuous recording rain gauge in the weather station that George would install high up in the Great Brook watershed. And if you'll remember, last July, there was a lot of rummaging around trying to find anyone who had a rain gauge high up. And we think, so that was hard to find. There's nothing reliable up there right now. And the rain high up in the watershed was about 4 inches total greater than the rain in the village. So it can be a big difference, and it's important to know that. The continuous rain gauge automatically uploads data to the Weather Underground, and there's another service that it can also feed to. And the neat thing about that is the data is captured, it can be downloaded, but people, any individual, can put the data into their newsfeed on their computer, and it can serve as an early warning system for them so that if there's a big storm forecast, they can be checking data on their computer and seeing if there's a lot of rain actually falling. So that's the summary. George is here to answer any questions, and we're asking the select board if you would approve a letter of support for the grant.
Okay, that's great. Do you have to have Wi-Fi access? I'm just curious how you're going to get this onto the internet.
Yes, Carl, we'd need to find a household with good, reliable power and internet connection, and this will be a Wi-Fi device.
Yeah, okay. Okay, any other questions?
If our house would work, you're welcome.
I think they
Okay.
We're pretty high up there.
We'll put you on the list. If we can get higher, it'll be good. But whether we have someone actually up, say, as far as Gore Road, who meets the requirements, I guess we have to see. But there'll be some good options. And thank you for that, Peter.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to do it too, but I had 4 inches less water than they had at the at the headwater myself. So I'm sure we can find someone. We have a motion to support this?
I'll make a motion to support the grant application for the weather station in the Upper Brook headwaters.
I second that motion.
Okay. And any discussion anymore? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. And I'll review that letter, and I guess I should have a okay to sign it on behalf of the board.
And that was a unanimous decision minus Dan Fingers.
Yes, right.
Tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a unanimous. Less
Thank you for doing
Dan.
all that.
Indeed. Thank you, Rose, George.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Were you asking for a motion to sign?
I don't know, do I need to? It's a letter of support from the board. And
I don't know why we always make
No,
separate
okay,
motions
okay.
anyway, so
okay, I'll just sign it.
we should include that.
Yeah. So grants group. Hi.
Those who don't know me, I'm Karen Hatcher. I'm the town grants administrator, and fortunate to be working with a talented group of volunteers who have been working on the flood recovery efforts and securing funds for our recovery. So wanted to give an update. It's been a while, and there's been a lot of activity And I'm sure folks have a lot of questions about what's going on. So I did provide a report to the board in advance, so you have had a chance to digest it, but I'll go through it so folks in the audience can hear that. And are you all hearing me?
I'm just
okay?
wondering if they're hearing all right.
You guys hear me okay?
Okay, looks
great.
okay.
I'm pretty close to the front.
Project like you're in a theater.
No worries there. All right, so what I thought I would do is run down kind of which grants we're in process with and what they are being used for and where we are kind of in the process of them. As you probably all know, FEMA Public Assistance is the primary, the first grant, the first one we started to work on, because it is the one that asks for the most information, and it's the one that has you capture all of the damage, So we spent the last several months really, thanks to Gary Smith, capturing all of the damage. And we filed the FEMA damage inventory on time with everything that could possibly be identified as potential damage. We are in what we're coming out of what we are calling the emergency phase of repairs. So over the course of the last, from August forward, the work that's been done out on the roads and in the infrastructure has been emergency repair work. That is one section of a FEMA application. That's section category A and B, and that has all been documented. And much of that money has been spent. And so where we are with category A and B in FEMA is at the point where we can begin to submit for reimbursement of what we have spent. So that's a good thing, because that will start to see some funds coming back. At the same time, and this can get a little complicated and hopefully not too much, I won't get in the weeds, but at the same time that we are working on the FEMA application, we are also working through the Federal Highway Administration, because Brook Road is a federal highway connector route. And because of that designation, Federal Highway has primary responsibility for repair on that whole road. So we are working in tandem to do both grants at the same time, because we don't know exactly who's paying for what yet. But what we do know is we must document on both tracks all of the damage and all of the potential permanent projects. And we have to work through a process that where we are now, when you come out of emergency, is you're at the point where you need to identify permanent projects. And those are sections of the road, those are groups of bridges, those are groups of culverts that make sense in terms of repair. Each one of those projects, both through the Federal Highway process and FEMA PA, have multi-step processes for each project. So in each case, for example, if you take the Mill Street Bridge, which is currently a temporary bridge, and you want to do a permanent project, Mill Street Bridge is part of the connector route. So Federal Highway has jurisdiction there first. And so the process for that would be multi-step, just for going through hiring an engineering firm, a project manager, getting design work done, engineering work done, costing, public meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So this goes through many, many, many steps, and each part of the repair will go through that. And each part will go through on the right track based on the advice we're getting from the consultants, as well as our contacts at Federal Highway and FEMA. So we're working through this process. It's we're learning a lot. It's very complicated, but we're going step by step. And so, so most likely there won't be like one project, one number for the whole of Great Brook and Brook Road. It will be many steps, many individual projects that get presented and decisions get made. So we expect that that's going to be an ongoing process for many years. That is not going to be like we're done. This is gonna take a lot of time. So that's where kind of federal highway and FEMA PA are at the moment. Okay, that's a lot. And that in itself could be a whole meeting and we could do a whole in-depth on all of that, but that's kind of, I'm trying to give top of the trees.
This is great.
All right,
Yeah.
okay, very good. Other grants that we're working on. The Emergency Watershed Protection Grant that I need some action on tonight.
Okay,
That was a grant that came to us, for those properties in town that were in imminent danger of, basically, the structures on the property being in danger of falling in should we have more flooding, or being undercut. And so we had 15 site visits. Of the 15, 4 properties were eligible. And where we are in that process is Brian Voigt is here tonight from CVRPC, and Brian has offered to take the lead for the town of Plainfield to work us through the grant process of that. And there are several steps. The one we're at now is being able to begin to do some engineering and some costing out of what the work would look like. We have estimates from the grant source, and they have the funds allocated for us. But before any of that happens and we decide, yes, we're going to go ahead, we need to do our own process of costing out. Because that they estimated, but it's really like, and Brian is familiar with this because he's done this with other towns. Brian, you want to weigh in a little bit on this? Since you joined? Thank you.
Oh, I thought you were doing great, Karen. I was just gonna sit here and just ride your wave. But yeah, so basically we're at the point now where what we need is for the town to express interest in moving forward. And so that would involve the select board voting to, authorize the preparation of the application packet. And that's important because, as Karen mentioned, that essentially triggers the work by the Natural Resources Conservation Service. They will do the engineering work for the affected sites and produce those engineering designs. And then it would be up to the town to decide if it's either work that the road crew wants to take on, or if we would contract that work out and actually hire a construction contractor. Way too early to make a decision about that. I'm just sort of putting that into context. And then the last piece that I'll note, well, 2 other things. This project is funded, or this grant is funded 75% by the Natural Resources Conservation Service, 25% by the sponsor. Now, the town is considered the sponsor, but that doesn't automatically mean the town's on the hook for the 25%. The different towns that I'm working with are kind of doing things a little bit differently depending on the project. So we can work out the specifics of that at a future meeting. I think at this first part, it's really just deciding about whether or not there's interest to proceed. And then the last piece that I'll note is that expressing interest to proceed tonight does not obligate anyone to spending any money, including the town and or the property owners. All that means is that the NRCS will produce the engineering designs and the refined cost estimates. And at that point, we can check in again with the town and the landowners and see where people stand in terms of wanting to move forward. The point at which you commit to expending funds is when we would contract with an engineer, if that was the course of action that was pursued for project implementation. So there's still plenty of time. I've encouraged the other municipalities that I'm working with to at least engage the process. Not promising this will happen. In fact, it's pretty likely not to happen. But last year, the funding initially started out as a 75%, 25% cost share, and eventually it moved to 100% federal coverage. So anything could happen. Again, I'm not saying that it's going to move to 100%, but if you're not in the queue for consideration, it's less likely that you would get access to those funds further down the road. So, coming out of tonight, if the select board wanted to approve a motion to move forward with the application for the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. CVRPC is here and ready to help with that process.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Or-
Well, I have questions.
Yeah, go
Of the earlier section in here, but I was wondering if we were gonna
Oh.
hear the whole
You want me to-
report
you want me to
before
finish and then?
going.
Well, on this, we need a motion for that one part for
This
this
is-
grant.
Since he's here, I don't know if we,
Well, then I would ask the question.
yeah,
In your report, you say, that there are, 4 properties and 2 are potentially in the buyout and you identify one of them.
I thought
You said the 99 Brook Road was in
no,
the
no,
buyout.
I'm sorry, it's that line, 1495 Coburn and 99 Brook
So
Road.
both of those.
Yeah, they're both potentially in the buyout program, so may not be.
So if the buyout goes, then you were basically talking about engineering for 2 sites.
Right.
On Martin Meadows and Barry Hill.
Right.
Okay. Do you have ballpark numbers?
Yeah, I think the way the estimate came in, the 25% adds up to about $100,000. It's pretty significant. It's the damage. So, Brian, is that right? I don't have the report in front of me, but I'm remembering one was 75,000 in the match and the other was 25 or thereabouts.
Yeah, 75 and 27,000.
Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty significant damage and work that would need to be done.
and this is to prevent, this is activity to prevent these structures from going into the brook again.
Into the water.
Yeah,
Is this evocative of the same kind of work that Route 2 just west of Goddard, like those vertical sheets of metal that we were hearing about? Is it
Yeah.
along those lines
Yeah,
that we're talking about?
Charlie, your hands up. You want to comment? Because one of those properties is you're involved with.
Yes, if I could comment, I would wish that both the committee and the planning involves the applicants. I have been involved in the outside, but what I'm hearing tonight are new numbers, and I've never seen the numbers. And I think it's only appropriate that we are a part of it.
Yep, 100%. Actually, Charlie, I thought I shared that with you, but if I didn't, I'm sorry. And Brian and I were working on a draft letter to go to those 4 property owners. It's not completed, so apologies for that too. We will get it out to the property owners. And you will be involved.
Yeah. And I will say that I am.
I can say,
much-
Charlie, also that,
Sorry.
oh, go ahead.
You first.
I was just gonna say that once the engineering designs are produced, you'll have a chance to review those as well. So if on the off chance it's a design that it's something that you're not interested in, again, you haven't committed to doing the project. So you will have an opportunity to weigh in at that point as well.
I do understand that I will have several opportunities and I will take advantage of them. And I will point out that I could have a lot to add to the evaluation, and I hope that the coordination is deep.
Thank you.
Are there estimate on the other 2 properties if they don't go through the buyout?
They are, yes, and I don't have them in front of me, but they're much less than those 2.
And would that match need to come out of next year's budget?
Where the match comes from is an open question.
I'm just in terms of timing.
Timing, Brian. These projects, what kind of timing are we looking at meeting the match?
The engineering work is not likely to be completed before end of March, beginning of April. So construction would likely be, unless we got lucky and there was a firm with an opening early season, I would guess that it would be in the fall. Yeah, I know, Charlie. That's why I said lucky. Maybe we'll get lucky. But I would expect it would be a fall construction.
But we're talking about the fiscal
The
year that
fiscal
would
year.
begin July 1st.
Correct.
which we're
Okay.
voting on at town meeting.
Correct.
And for which we have no money in the budget.
Right, so the question is gonna be,
Yeah, and this raises a question about ongoing matches
Mhm.
for grants, and so
Mhm.
how we fund those and where that money comes from, so.
Mhm.
Well, and that was my other question, going
Correct.
back to the FEMA federal highways.
Yeah.
In the terms of the public assistance, I was a public assistance when I ran the clinic in Barry. We had FEMA assistance from the flood in May of the year that Irene hit here.
Okay.
And the public assistance match there was 75-25,
Mm,
they said.
right,
And then when you got the contract, it said 75% of approved expenditures. And in the end, we ended up paying 75% and FEMA covered 25%.
really,
Yeah, and so I think we have to be very careful
okay.
with the contract and matches.
We
But
have, what we have confirmed with the state is the state's portion, the FEMA portion, and with FEMA, we understand that town's portion is 7.5%. So, that's because we get 17.5% from the state because we've met certain requirements. So it's 75 from the feds, 17.5 from the state, and then the remaining 7.5 is ours.
right, so there, it is 75-25 of approved expenditures.
Yes,
That's,
of course, but
yeah.
each one of those projects has to go through a whole approval process. So it's not like we'll be surprised by it. We will have the information well in advance to make those decisions about whether we go ahead with a project, whether we adjust a plan for a project. So it's not, there's so many places where we're gonna be able to make decisions, the board will make decisions about, yes, we go ahead, we can figure out how to fund the balance of what's needed here, or we don't. And so our job, is to provide to you all the ways that we can figure out how to fund all of those things. But ultimately, it's gonna be project by project and priority,
yeah.
and the board will decide that.
I'll have a private conversation with you because
Okay,
V-Trans was the grantee and that's who we dealt with here, so.
okay, so we are dealing with, V-Trans is the grantee for Federal Highway.
Yep.
And we're the sub-grantee, so. But we're following the process as closely as we can. All right, so that was that one, and I just have a couple more, just.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then I'll be done. I wanted to also just raise the municipal planning grant with you that opens today. We have to, if we are going to apply for a municipal planning grant, we have to do that by March 31st. The grant is $30,000, which would allow us to do some planning work. There are a couple of ideas that the work group has for using those funds. But we wanted to hear from the board as to your thoughts. The first one that was put forward was planning around the green space at the bottom of Brook Road, at the bottom of the Great Brook. We know that there will be a number of homes that will be removed through the buyout. And there currently isn't any money set aside to be able to do the planning around how to reshape that area and make it a green space or a park. And so one of the ideas was to use the planning grant to be able to do that work. That was one idea.
Is that 100% funding?
It is. Right about that. Municipal planning grant, 30%. Yeah. 90%, $3,000 is the match.
Mhm.
Thank you. It's hard to keep them all straight, but I got it. The second idea came, and this has to do also with the changes to the zoning for housing, but one of the ideas was to do a study on infill housing around town. So to actually identify the places where infill housing could happen, so that as we're thinking about increased housing in town, we could have a study done that would allow us to have that information for future planning. Those were two ideas that came out of the group. We're not locked into either of those. We're open to other ideas, but these funds are available and they allow us to tap into resources in the community to be able to do planning work. So just.
I'm wondering, are multiple ideas mutually exclusive to one another? In terms of, I think about the price tag of like a master plan redesign of the Lower Brook, and the more seats to my ears bureaucratic task of identifying parcels that could be infilled. it seems like one is way less than the other. And, are the two ideas possible together? Can the municipal planning grant be committed to multiple sub-projects?
We can ask, we did ask about putting multiple applications in for different ideas. And they said, you don't want to be competing with yourself.
I got you. So
So
not,
they're trying to get us to land on an idea.
okay, understood. Thank you.
Yeah. So Hannah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that me?
And, yes.
Yeah, hi. I just was wondering, I mean, right now it seems like those are very specific projects and we may need a overall town plan. Like we have Goddard to consider, we have sidewalks to the new co-op, we have sidewalks to Maplefield. We have a lot of stuff that like needs planning that's not a specific thing. So I don't know whether that grant would be sufficient for a bigger vision and not just such smaller visions. I mean, I've been really feeling the lack of a cohesive vision for the town in a lot of these conversations. So I wonder if that might be something to be considered.
Certainly considered. I think we've had offers from the state to come in and conduct meetings to talk about the future of the town at no charge to us. But as always, it takes effort from volunteers and folks who want to group together and study these things. I'm sure the board would be happy to, if there was a group like that pursuing these important issues. But it's not going to just happen, I think. But if there was enough interest in town, I think we could get Jessica or somebody from the state to come in and organize a meeting for us and talk about it.
Well, especially if we had a grant for a professional who could actually put all these thoughts into a town plan.
Well, that's certainly worth considering.
I think when we talked about this early on, we did imagine at some point that a number of community conversations would need to happen.
Yes.
I think having just come out of the emergency phase of the grant work and being able to now start to plan, which is kind of where we are. It's just a matter for the board to decide at what point I don't think that's something the grants group is responsible for, but I think the board could decide at a certain point that it would be time to have those bigger conversations. I mean, what we're trying to do is just try to, as they come, identify how we might use them to forward the information, gather information and forward the process. But 100% up to the board, how you want to do that part.
Yep.
You want me to go on?
Yes. Please.
So my question to you about the municipal planning grant is whether you have a feeling either way, or if you have a different idea, because the grant would need to start to be written.
Oh, I
It's
see.
important to hear from you because it ultimately it is the select board that ends up applying for a municipal planning grant, you guys sign off.
Right.
So it's your request.
But it has to be defined what we want to plan for. That's the point. And
Yeah.
so
When's the deadline?
So March 31st, it's open now. It just opened today.
is there an advantage? Well, you want to have enough time to write it properly and,
Yes.
and it'd be nice to have a heading. I don't know if are we going to be able to have a favorite?
Is there another round after this?
I think it's once a year.
Once a year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is this year's. So, and it's $30,000. It's not.
Yeah.
So big that you can do so much with it, but I think if you had a very defined idea and you wanted to do it. I mean, what we're concerned about with the green space is that once those homes are removed, basically what happens is the land is cleared. But there isn't really a whole plan for, okay, what do we do with the space afterward? And how do we take it step by step and convert it from what it was to something else? And there are examples of it, Northfield did a really beautiful thing with Dogwood Park, right? Dog River Park. And so there are examples, but I think having someone else go out and help us gather all that information, kind of put a plan together for us and help us do that and it's paid for through a grant, I think that's a lovely thing because,
From the ideas you've shared, it seems like that one, the Lower Brook green space design feels commensurate with the amount of the grant.
Yeah.
The infill housing less so. And we know that need is coming. And if this is our time to like roll the dice for it, yeah, I support that.
anybody else have a feeling either way?
I mean, we're gonna have to figure out what to do in a green space, but I mean. Last I talked with Arian as buyout coordinator, there was an expectation that we'll hear about buyouts sometime in February. How long, we've heard about the 2023 ones along the Winooski, but I don't know what the timetable is for raising those houses and doing that, but I mean, it seems to me that we're probably a year away from this, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And a lot of stuff and a lot of ideas of planning, and then it's implementation. And yes, there's match for planning and there's bigger match for implementation or bigger cost for
Yeah.
implementation. And there's a lot going on. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure there's a hurry on that.
Do you think we should apply for this next year or not?
That's why I asked the question,
well, in this
Where we are.
case, I mean, in this case, this is a 10% $3,000 match. This is not $100,000 or 30,000, right? This
Yeah.
is small compared to other things.
Mhm.
And I think that I think we're gonna need to get, and I say this respectfully, I think we're gonna need to get comfortable with matches in this process. There's so much money that's gonna need to be spent on the repairs and the work to recover. And there will be matches, and we're gonna have to figure out as a town how we fund those. It's gotta be part of the planning for all of it. And we haven't yet, we're just coming to the point where it's like, oh, there's gonna need to be a lot of money. So whether that is something that happens through the bond bank and the funds that are loaned to us, and there's some allocation for matches, and we kind of know that that's what we have to plan for. I think we have to start to think that way, because if we don't, what we'll do is not do maybe the things we know we should do, because we're worried about that. And I think if we can think creatively about how to match and how to come up with that matching money, that it doesn't cost us a lot of money, we're gonna need to do that.
Well, to put that
That's
in,
just from this seat, from being in the middle of the big numbers, I think we have to figure out how we're gonna be able to do some of this work.
well, I'd just like to throw out, which was surprising to me, that in the 23 flood, we had something around a $300,000 damage. And we wound up getting reimbursed about 200,000. Probably could have gotten more, but we were in a little disarray. This project, according to FEMA, just walking or going down the Brook Road, it's 15 to 20 million.
Wow.
So the scale from one to the other is significant. There's potential for millions of dollars to come through this town, which is scary as hell, because our budget's of 1.3, but we've had a lot of damage. We've lost homes, we've lost people's housing, we've lost communities. I mean, it's a significant change. So I think the town has to be ready for change, and it's not all on the taxpayer. But we have to be careful in how we, what projects we pick and how we
Exactly.
fund our share.
Yeah. It's not easy.
No,
It's
it's
not
not gonna be
easy,
easy. It's
any of
gonna
us.
take a lot of work.
Yeah.
And thank you for your work and your committee, your group's
Yeah.
work. It's
Okay,
very
So-
important.
two other things.
Yeah.
So at this point, we'll just hit the hold button on the municipal planning grant and just,
Can we have it a future,
yeah, let's talk about that again.
even in February or
I'll bring
something?
it back to the
Bring it
have
back.
some
Yeah,
other
yeah.
discussions.
I don't think we're ready yet.
Okay, also just wanted to report that, today, George Springston, Michael Zahner, and I met with Steve Libby from Vermont Emergency Management to talk about something called the FEMA Advanced System Funding Grant. And these would be funds that would provide us with a top to bottom modeling of the book. And George can probably speak to this, but they've done this in Lyndonville and they're doing it in Huntington, where funds are being provided to be able to do the scientific work, the mapping and the modeling of what happens all the way down the brook. And when certain conditions happen. And we don't currently have that. George, I don't know if you're still on, if you want to say anything about that.
Yeah, sure. This is George Springston. The study that we're talking about gives us the quantitative information so that engineers and river scientists can really design the best fixes, well, help us make the best decisions about what to fix, what not to fix, where to move things in and near the brook. And it gives us the quantitative information that they'll need to do that. And this is building on what Michael Zahner prepared in the fall in a very short time frame for a hazard mitigation planning grant. But I gather, and Karen or Michael can correct me, that it doesn't look great to get funded for that one. But the advanced assistance grant that Steve Libby was telling us about, it looks like we have a very good chance of getting this. This is the foundation stone for the big work that will need to be done regardless of our decisions on Great Brook.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
That this would be the foundation for the federal highway,
It would,
long-term.
Or FEMA.
it would provide us, the information about what we need to do with the brook at the same time we're looking at the infrastructure. So it gives us that view as we're looking at what the infrastructure fixes could be. Am I explaining that right, George? Because that's how I think about it. It gives us that technical information on the brook side of the conversation. Because as I think about it, it's like we've got the infrastructure side of things and we've got the brook side of things. And how do those interact?
Yeah.
And is there a match required for this?
Yes. What did, oh gosh. He said today, yes, so he said, let me get the number. That was 75-25 also, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I remember, yeah, that's right. That's another one. And we had some thoughts about maybe approaching the community foundation because this is such an important piece of what we need to have done. This information could inform everything.
And what's the cost of this grant?
$150,000 is what they estimated Huntington. I think Huntington was 120 and Lyndonville was more than that, but somewhere between 150 and 200, I think they were talking about. So we're talking about a match of 50,000 at the top end and being able to go raise that privately, I think is the way we were talking about doing it. That just felt like a really important piece to have.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So that's first conversation today. So we'll keep you informed
Great.
about that. And the last thing is second to last, we just heard about community development block grant for disaster relief that came through from the federal government, 68 million to Vermont, and of that 55 million to Washington and Lamoille County counties, and a maximum $10 million grant application we can put in for many things. But we were having a meeting tomorrow with Pat Moulton and with Melissa Bounty from CVEDC to talk through some of our ideas about how to fold in the things we had in the regional priority list for a grant application. Don't believe there's a match on this, Peter, so,
No, but
but.
it's federal funds. So
They
we
are.
can't, use
they
these to
wouldn't
match any of
matches
the
to
other
anything
grants.
else. No, exactly right.
So it's another project.
It's another way to pay for things that we're trying to get done. But not the infrastructure, other pieces that are part of the recovery. So bigger discussion, but we're coming back, could be including some of the village expansion funding or all of it, some things like that. So we'll learn more tomorrow.
Okay.
And then lastly, setting up a meeting with Christy Farnham about the Northern Borders Grant. To learn more about that, there's a spring round of funding there. So, so those are the pieces that we're working on. It's a puzzle.
Thank you.
It's a puzzle, and
Brian, our job as we see it is to bring you the information.
Yeah.
And provide that to you so you can make good decisions. That's all. Thank you.
thank you very much. A lot to digest.
Yeah.
Coming back
Any
around,
questions?
I have a question, I hope it's not a ridiculous question. Is there any, money from any of the grants that could pay for some of the match? And
Well,
free that money?
the way that it works, Patty, is that if it's federal money, the rule is you can't use federal grants to match federal grants. So like, we can't make that work. There's state money,
Okay,
and some state money is being made available to be able to offset some of that.
okay,
We're exploring all of it. We don't know. I mean, this is the big puzzle. We don't know exactly how we're gonna fund everything. But we are having, we're starting next month to have what we're calling Plainfield funding / projects roundtables with all of the funders and all of the folks who are helping us with projects so that we can have these coordinated conversations and talk about, okay, if this is gonna cost this much, how can you help us figure out how to fund the rest of it? And we're not the only town, obviously, going through this. And lots of towns are having to answer the same question about matches. And where's that money gonna come from? And I don't think, in all the conversations I've had with folks at the state, there's no desire for us to fail. Like, they wanna figure out how to help us
Yeah.
do what we need to do. And I think it's just a matter of continuing to have those conversations and to lay it out in front of them to say, we've got this, we can do this. What else can you help us with? Because we don't have it in the budget to do it. Where can it come from? So we're gonna keep having those conversations and hopefully we can bring you good information and answers around that. I don't know what else to do.
If we don't ask the questions, we'll leave a lot on the table, in my mind.
yeah,
We're gonna ask for everything. I just don't, none of us have done this before.
I mean, I think to that point, circling around to the Brian and the CVRPC, it's like what is being asked of us tonight is like leave open the door of possibility and information gathering about this like one particular approach, which I see as like part of a diversity of tactics about flood recovery. And here are 2 points on the map of Plainfield that wouldn't otherwise be served by any of the other efforts happening around. And so it's like leaving that door open to find out more, to become eligible for even like a greater proportion of funding, which I understood we weren't to expect, but is possible and in the realm of possibility. So I mean, I feel open to that.
I would just offer too, that I think at some point it would be a good idea to have a bigger conversation about the recovery funding as a whole.
Yep.
Right, and to strategize around it together, because we're getting a lot of information and we don't, I think all the good minds at the table asking the right questions would be helpful.
I'm sorry, I'm sitting way over here. Would that, or when you think about that, are you thinking like within a select board meeting, or are you thinking about as like a special meeting, something that would happen
I think, well, I think the first is with the select board to be able to, you know, they're in charge of the town coffers, right? And so to be able to have a full look at these are the things we've heard, and these are the things that are being offered to us, and this would be the part of it that the town would need to come up with. And then how do we strategize as leadership? How does the leadership strategize to, you know, to be able to come up with it? That's what I think. But again, I'm open to, I don't know how other towns are doing it either. My guess is that they're having conversations at this level.
My feeling is that it would be sponsored by the select board. The idea of having a public meeting, a townwide meeting, but maybe not expect to make any decisions. But I think it's important for all of us to hear ideas and concerns and questions and answers. That's my sense. I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking if you were trying to pack it into a select board meeting.
No,
it's
no.
not really
No,
possible.
it's
So
really
a
hard, like
separate-
even tonight, I had 10 minutes
Yeah.
on the agenda, but you could see, there's
Yeah.
so many pieces of this, it just should be a much bigger conversation.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just really appreciate how on top of it you all are, but yeah, I feel like we have to move it to that next level.
Thank you, Simone.
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, for Brian's,
It's been so long since I heard about it, I might struggle for the words.
This is the Emergency Watershed Protection Grant. And this is basically, there's no cost at this point.
There's not,
It's to get the design and costing. So it would inform us as to if we decided to go ahead, what.
yes, to
What
put
are
the
we-
packet together, to begin to assemble the packets for the properties.
like with many of these grant applications, the grantor is looking for support from the town. And that's why this is needed.
Make a motion to support the. Oh my God.
It's the Emergency Watershed Protection Grant.
Yeah, emergency
The
watershed.
Emergency Watershed Protection Grant.
Yeah.
Information gathering, fact finding, engineering. Cost analysis
The application.
That's for
packet.
the application for the grant.
I like
and
the
a- and a-
application
and a-
packet.
and a non-committal. Position that the town is presently in.
Right.
Motion made.
Okay, second from Patty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous amongst the four of us, and thank you very much. Okay, next item. We're discussing the proposal to add town bond to finance village expansion project in town meeting. Warning. Aaron, you're here, I assume?
I'm here remotely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a big ask, and so can you give us the current status of where you're at? And also I would say, from being at one of the informational meetings, which I appreciate you having, and just outside talking, there's still a fair number of questions, and so we want to see how we can get those addressed.
That's great. Yeah, so we did hold, sorry, I'm getting some echo. I hope it seems to be better. We did hold a couple of information sessions earlier this month.
turn
Those
that
were very well attended in real time. We had at least 150 people in real time, and they've also been viewed quite a few times since then. The overview of the project to this point is that we have preliminary engineering and a preliminary budget of a not to exceed amount of $2.5 million. Why I say preliminary engineering, one is because this is first phase, and two, because the final layout of what our citizen group is proposing is going to come out of a community design workshop, which is scheduled to take place on February 8th, which we have about 80 people who've RSVP'd for, who have RSVP'd at this point. Once we have that final layout, we can be more specific with the budgetary numbers around, well, how much do the roads actually cost? Because we have certain internal roads, we have a contingency in there for a maximum amount of linear feet, but when we have a more specific design, we can generate more specific numbers. And one of the things that our group has been a little hesitant about is about releasing various series of interim numbers that would increase confusion rather than clarify. There is another item that's also pending, which is a land option, which is the next select board agenda item. And once that is nailed down, that becomes public information, which I know is a huge question that people have been asking about, very reasonably so. So the request before the select board is to put an item on the ballot for the March town meeting, the Australian ballot portion that is mailed out, or people receive ballots and then they vote by town meeting day, with specific language that was drafted by Eli Emerson, who is a bond attorney that the town has used in other bonding circumstances and recently used with the funds that were provided by the state as part of the cash flow management for the current disaster recovery. So there's an ask of very specific language, which I'm happy to share and I can put on the screen in terms of additional in terms of the overall process. For clarity, the ask is that this become an item that gets voted on the ballot, and what this allows the town to do is to borrow up to this amount of $2.5 million, but it does not require the town actually to do anything. It just gives the select board the authority to borrow this money and to move forward at the project in any increment that the select board sees feasible. So there's no obligation from putting this on the ballot, and there's no obligation from this ballot item actually passing. All authority remains with the select board to make any decision. And I think that's a really important point to make, because there's a lot of folks that have said, well, you know, maybe you should think about doing it like this, or maybe you should think about doing it like that. And all our group has the authority to do is to come up with a proposal. And I think we've spent a lot of time coming up with a comprehensive proposal that really outlines how this could work. And, you know, we're very open to, you know, and necessarily so, to say other people, well, maybe some little things could be tweaked here or there. And ultimately, those decisions will rest with you guys as a body. If the town votes to authorize this, the select board still has to make the steps about how the town would actually proceed. So I hope that that's clear. Questions around that?
I guess my main question was, the language that I read it sounded like this is asking the town to vote on and kind of requiring the select board to borrow this money. And I would prefer to see a language, if it's possible, to give the select board authorization to do that if they receive enough answers to questions that we still have. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just a subtle change, but I feel.
So I'll share the language. I don't know if share screen is available right now. It says sharing is disabled for participants. Is there somebody who could turn that on?
Why don't you read the paragraph?
Yeah.
The paragraph that
Sure. Yeah, it is a little bit long, so I'll just warn you on the front end. And my understanding, when you listen for the language, it's a lot of shall and not exceed, which means that the amount actually borrowed and how it's borrowed is up to the select board, as I understand it. So it says shall general obligation bonds or notes in an amount not to exceed $2,500,000, subject to reduction by the application of federal and state grants in aid and reserve funds, be issued for the purposes of expanding the east side of the village by acquiring land and constructing highway and other municipal infrastructure improvements, the estimated cost of such acquisition and improvements being $2,500,000. It is a long sentence.
Yeah. Yep.
And you can try screen sharing. I think I just made that possible for the visual learners out there.
Arian, read the first
Yeah.
sentence. Read the first sentence again.
Picture.
So it is just one sentence. Shall general obligation bonds or notes in an amount not to exceed $2,500,000 and then subject to the reduction of grants be issued for the purpose of expanding the east side of the village by acquiring land and constructing highway and other municipal infrastructure improvements, the estimated cost of such acquisition improvements being $2,500,000.
Arian can share now.
I'm trying to share it. Still didn't work for me.
They made you co-host.
We made you a co-host, so you can do it.
Okay, great. Awesome. Okay. So can folks see this?
Yes, yes, thanks.
Carl, can I say something? It's Richard Rubin.
Yes, Richard, yeah.
I see your concern. It doesn't obligate the town to any specific amount because it's not to exceed, but it does seem to obligate the town to approve some bonds. So we could put in a clause that says, shall the general obligation bonds or notes in an amount subject to the approval of the select board, blah, blah,
That's
blah.
what I was,
And I
that's
think
what I
that's
was
a good
looking
idea.
for. Yeah. Because I would like to get a reading from the community on this project. And I think this is a way to do it. But I don't want to be telling the folks in town who are voting that we're ready to spend $2.5 million or borrow $2.5 million when we really don't have the project really together yet. It's,
So I
you know,
think
it's
the
still long.
the language that Arian just inserted, if that was Arian who inserted it, solves your problem.
Yeah, I did just add that. If you think that looks
I
agreeable.
can't quite see it because of the screen. Oh, there
Well,
you go.
it says shall general obligation bonds or notes in an amount not to exceed $2,500,000, subject to the approval of the select board.
Yeah,
And
that works. That
That-
works for me.
I think that does it for you.
Yeah. And, yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, and I had, when I studied this language, I went and this came from Eli. And
Correct.
he used the model language in Title 24, Chapter 53, dealing with public financing. And basically the language is reflected in what he wrote here, and the statute basically says it shall substantially look like this, which gives some leeway. And if you go further into the statute, it gives us some other leeway. For example, in the public hearings and in other places, it's been talked about that this would be a loan or bond for 10 years. And I think the financing page that's on the website where it goes further than that and says not only is it 10 years, which the language is not in here, but certainly the statute, and I believe it's section 1786, subsection 1786A, it anticipates putting in language that says to be financed over a period not to exceed X number of years. Similarly, another subsection gives us the opportunity to limit the interest rate that is paid, subject to an interest rate not to exceed. And in a lot of the public talks and representations, it has said that we're going to have access to a low to no interest loan, and I believe the number 2% has been floated. And none of that's reflected in this specific language here. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on us adding language that says term not to exceed 10 years and a term not to exceed 2% interest.
I mean, I certainly have no objection to that. I would say that's been those have been the conversations so far with the Vermont Community Foundation, who has expressed interest in this project, but obviously, there's no formal arrangement in place because we don't know if we actually have a project yet. So I know that the conversation with Eli, I did mention to him 10 years. And this was the language he sent back, but I don't see any reason why not to insert those other caveats into there, Peter.
Thank you. There's some other, I would say weedy questions, and I'll skip over those for the moment, but Eli also sent another document attached to this, which was called, I'm blanking on the name.
I can find
It's
it.
it's a resolution.
Mhm.
And my question is that resolution, and I'm gonna get it here in a second. Does the resolution required to be passed and approved before we issue the bond, or before it's a necessity resolution, that's the term I'm looking for. Do we have to issue that before we vote or before we issue the bond?
It's a good question. I am not 100% on that. My understanding is that this resolution is required to for the item to properly be on the ballot. I could definitely ask Eli, but yeah.
Bear with me one second here.
Mm-hmm.
I did copy it earlier today.
Nothing else, right? Little questions, so fun.
Oh, yeah, here it is.
I'm happy to screen share that as well if you'd like.
The necessity resolution says, I, Bram Tobin, certify that I am the duly elected and qualified clerk of the town of Plainfield Municipal Corporation located blah, blah, blah. I have custody of the books, records, etc. And that the following is a true and exact copy of a resolution duly adopted at a meeting of the select board of the town, duly called, noticed, and held on such and such a date. It's just a date to fill in. It's not filled in. At which time a quorum of the board of members of select board was present, voting that the same remains in full force and effect. The next one says resolved that the public interest and necessity demand certain improvements be made, namely the expansion of the east side of the village through implementation of this $2.5 million bond, and it goes on. And so as a legal process question, I wonder if we have to have warned and this. And then I have another question as to whether Bram can actually sign it under the municipal code of ethics.
That's a great question. I'll answer your second question first, because I did ask that question of Eli, and he didn't send a revised document, but he said Bram should recuse himself from the signing of this document or the process, and that Clarel Smith would be the one to sign it as an assistant town clerk, as just a matter of form.
Can I speak on this? It's Richard.
Yes,
I don't think this is necessary at this time. Putting this on the warning really gives the town an opportunity to kind of say, go ahead and figure out what you want to do. I do agree that the necessity resolution will need to be approved prior to going ahead, but with the loan application, the bond application. But I don't think it has to be done prior to this resolution or the thing being presented to the town at town meeting. This is a way for the town to say, okay, the selectmen have the chance to see whether to go ahead with this. We like it and we trust you. If the selectmen say, let's do it, then you'll need a necessity resolution.
There is one point in here, though, that is so the first, second, third, fourth paragraph says in here, that basically this proposal for the issuance of general obligation bonds shall be submitted to the legal voters of the town at the annual meeting thereof to be duly called and held for that purpose on March 4th, 2025. So that to me does seem to indicate it would need to be ahead of that town meeting. And I'm sorry to not have a clear answer to that.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Oh, Charlie you have a comment on that, Charlie?
Yeah, it's slightly different, but if this comes up for a vote, this will be the one and only chance, apparently, that the town as a whole will have an opportunity to have a say. After that vote, if it is passed, the town is deferring to the select board, and the town is making a decision about things that have yet to be defined. That is the plan, the cost, how we go forward. I trust the select board, but it's a case in point that the town should be the one as a whole to okay things more than just once without knowing what's going on completely.
John, Hosford, and Paula and back here.
Yep, John Hosford, and then
Thank you. To be clear, I am one of the 4 landowners that will be directly affected by this project. It seems to me that if I went to my boss and said, hey, I want you to spend $2.5 million or authorize spending $2.5 million without any details whatsoever, he'd laugh me out of his office and possibly fire me. I think for the board to go forward with this, you don't have the best fiduciary interests in the heart for us. That's just the way I'm feeling like it. We've asked over and over and over for details. I realize some of them are up in the air, but they came to that $2.5 million number somehow, and they refused to tell us how. I know they have the best interests, but until we have all the information, I don't know how anybody can make a decision on this. Thank you.
Paula,
Okay,
you have to speak up.
Can you, oh yeah.
And identify yourself.
I'm
Identify
Paula
yourself.
Emery, I am in the room. Did I just hear you say though, that I'm not understanding the connection where if this basically gives the select board a chance to consider it, how is that ruling out public comment? I mean, we're all here now. Would the select board then just be like, okay, we're gonna do whatever we want? Or would the select board take time to deliberate on whether or not to actually take out this bond? Is there time for deliberation? Something the select board can even take on, but you know, I think I'm hearing that.
Well, another comment on that?
No, I just think that.
And state your name
what
for the record,
Charlie-
please, state your-
Doug Weinrich.
Yeah.
I think what Charlie is saying is that if this goes to a vote and gets approved,
Mhm.
it is now up to the select board to decide, and the rest of the town no longer has direct voting input on this matter.
Mhm.
I've been in the meetings and I've asked questions. Zero numbers as far as where the $2.5 million came from. I think it would be irresponsible to put it on the ballot without some sort of an idea of where these funds are going, some sort of a spreadsheet. What's it costing you for the road? What's it costing you to bring the services in? Who's gonna do it? Because the town doesn't, in my opinion, the town doesn't have the expertise to run this project. So somebody's gonna have to be brought in to do it. There's a cost associated with that. I just haven't seen anywhere near enough information, and I'm in favor of putting the project in. I'm just not in favor of the town being on the hook for $2.5 million that we have no idea how it's gonna be spent.
Fair enough. And I would say that one of the options the select board has is have another special meeting, town meeting. We have a vote. we get all the information together and we bring it to the town again for a very special meeting on this project. That would be what I would see, but I would like to know if the town's basically behind this before this committee, this group, does all this extra work and tries to get cost estimates that are accurate, and then find out that the town's not really that interested in it. So,
Who's actually gonna be the developer is my question.
go ahead.
My understanding is the town is the developer here. Let me set some context, and I've spent several sleepless nights thinking about how to put this forth. I live on East Hill. I go by the property. I think it's a very attractive property. I think the committee has done a tremendous amount of work creating a vision here. It's attractive because it's accessible to sewer and water, although I have specific questions about stormwater runoff and whether a feasibility study has been completed and concluded that the water should go into the Winooski rather than the Great Brook, and is the Main Street sewer system capable of handling that overflow, that amount of water? I've seen no numbers. I've seen no numbers on the budget. And I want to say that, committee has done, I think, great bringing a vision to this place. But now we have to do the hard work of looking at the devil's details here. I spent about an hour and a half on the phone with Mike Zahner on Saturday, and he sent all of us a rather lengthy analysis. Mike Zahner has spent his entire public government life working on Act 250. And he basically says that NDA, neighborhood development area designation or not, this is a subdivision and there's no exemption under Act 250 for subdivision regulations. You can do a housing project of less than 10 acres and less than 10 lots. That's not what is envisioned here. And so that's an issue. We have a new statewide municipal ethics law that, and I brought that and I can read you the question, but basically it says no town official may be the subject of, may benefit from a contract that other people in the same situation would not also benefit from. And some of us have just taken the new municipal ethics training. And the example they give, just to be clear about it, is a municipal parking lot. Think the city of Montpelier, okay? If a city councilwoman comes there and has to pay a higher fee that the city council is going to vote on, that's not something that they're individually and uniquely going to do. They're going to be in the same situation as everyone else. So they can go ahead and vote on that. If they owned a competing parking lot next door, they would benefit by the city raising the parking fees. And, they would be able to raise theirs by a similar amount and still stay competitive and make some extra money. That's a conflict. Okay. The municipal ethics thing says you cannot be in that unique position. And in this case, there is no person, there isn't except the property owner who is in that unique position. And then there are other conditions. We can't be talking about more than $2,000. We can't be talking price. And, we're talking a 26-acre plot. I think we're probably over $2,000. And there's some other conditions like that. But I think we have an issue there and we have no legal opinion here as to whether this could even go forward under the circumstances. Whether the proposals to increase the density in the zoning that we're going to be hearing at public hearing on Friday would apply here and thus create the expedited Act 250 process that folks are hoping for to, do some construction maybe this season. Mike Zahner's estimate was that subdivision, probably you're talking 6 months to go through that. And if we have the time to warn and bid a bond, et cetera, out there, realistically, that's not gonna happen this year. Not gonna happen this year, okay? The breakdown of costs, we don't know. We have not seen. And I look at the other costs that we're facing as a town, and where this falls in. You know, some people have said this is rushed, you know? I want to give you, and everyone who's listening, my perspective on this. It was in January, earlier this month, that the planning commission came to us with a proposal for interim zoning bylaws. And this was a lot of this was to address the issues of density so that this project could qualify for the NDA designation and thus get this exemption, okay? So the Act 250 stuff that Mike Zonner has raised aside, just to get that density stuff in there. They were going to come to the select board meeting on January 6th, okay? And on January 6th, earlier in the afternoon, I was speaking with the folks at Commerce and Community Development, and I said, here's the situation, et cetera. And I said, and you know, we have on our agenda tonight zoning bylaws, and I was trying to do some homework. And he said, you can't do that by interim zoning bylaws. And apparently some phone calls went on during the day, because before our meeting at 6 o'clock that night, the planning commission had withdrawn the request for interim zoning bylaws and instead held a meeting. And they meet the same time we do, you know, which is, so we can't compete at each other's meetings. They then said, okay, we're going to go forward with the conventional zoning process. That is what is required in order to qualify for NDA. And so they held a public hearing and then came to us and said, would you warn a public hearing? Okay, because we have to do that as part of the legal process. And at our last meeting, we said, okay, we can take that up to warrant. I'll give you another timetable here. This Sunday, February 2nd, is the very last day that we can warn our town meeting and the articles thereon. Okay, so we're being asked tonight to approve language for this project with it being posted legally on Sunday. Other than a pass-through grant that we agreed to be the fiscal agent for this project and give to the steering committee to work with, we as select board members cannot discuss anything outside of this meeting and deliberate on this. This is the first time that we as a board have discussed this project at all. At all. Okay. So I'm troubled by that. And I'm troubled by some other things which we'll get to in the next agenda item. But there are so many factors here that lead me to believe that despite the great vision, and I think this has a good opportunity, we're not ready. We're not ready. And I will vote no in terms of putting this on the ballot for town meeting, because I do not want to put the townspeople in that position of being not ready to do this right.
We have some hands up.
Thank you, Peter. Alicia.
Who do we have?
Alicia and Aaron.
Alicia Weiss.
Alicia, yep.
Hi, Alicia Weiss, Plainfield, also one of the homeowners who would be directly affected by this project. So that's just for disclosure, not to frame what I have to say. Thank you very much for your remarks, Peter, and to everyone who spoke. First, I want to recognize the expansion committee for having done phenomenal work with amazing heart. I do not, however, I've been one of the people saying this feels rushed and at a larger scale all at once before we've before we've had time to really think about our growth in a planful way. And it would be the largest expansion in probably Plainfield's history. But more to the point, I do not believe, particularly considering the process that's been discussed today, I do not think there is time for the select board to have substantive conversations with the town. Because there was a point raised, well, maybe we approve this and then we have an extra meeting with the town. I think there are so many questions, and I think that this is such a large and important project. I don't think 1 or 2 meetings are going to do this, and I would hate to see our future planning get off to that type of start. Yes, I understand we have a town plan, but the town plan was not informed by the type of devastation, need, or a project proposed by a group of citizens. And I really think we need time to do this well, to have substantive conversations with time for feedback, with numbers, with time for people to consider them. I think that's what we are entitled to as the town, and I think otherwise would be to put an unreasonable burden on on the select board. So my throat's going, so thank you.
Okay, Ann, you were next, and then Arian.
So all I wanted to say is, you said something about, I want to know whether the town is behind it before more time is put into it. And I think we don't know whether we're behind it because we don't know the details. So it's like, kind of like, what comes first, chicken or the egg there? And the other part is that if we are going to put this on the ballot, I think we should definitely include language about subsequent meetings, that they would be required, not just the select board thinks that would be a good idea, but that they would be required for the townspeople to be able to vote on this at more than this one time. Just in terms, I don't know how that is phrased, but I think it's really, really important that that is not just left up to, like, oh, I think it's a good time for a meeting, or we should have one. I think it should be written down as an expectation of at least one or more meetings where the townspeople can actually discuss the particulars of what kind of money they're getting into and what it looks like from a taxpayer, basis.
Okay, Arian.
Sorry, I'm muted. Thank you. I do think that what we are considering, or what our group is asking the select board to consider this evening, is whether to put this on the ballot for a town vote. And yes, we've heard some people, we have a well-organized group of neighbors who is against this project. There is nothing hidden about that. Some of whom bought their house from Bram America and knew the land was going to be developed. Some of which have tried to purchase the land from Bram America even recently. And so there is, there are some people who I would argue are somewhat conflicted in this, who have voiced opposition to this project this evening. And I understand that there are some questions. The select board is aware that one of the largest questions is the value of the land. And one of the reasons that we can't release some other specific information is because it implies the value of the land. And as is specified in the general statutes, a reason for the select board to hold an executive session is to discuss matters such as the value of the land, because publicly disclosing a price for the value of the land ahead of that being negotiated puts the negotiating party in a compromised position. And we can speak specifically about that. So while I would say that that is not ideal that that has happened to this point, one of the reasons that we are where we are today is because the select board, prior to Peter Youngbear joining the select board, in meetings both last August and last September, as this project was initially being proposed, said, come to the select board with a fuller, more fleshed out project, form a group to develop that, come up with a preliminary budget, and let's explore this more thoroughly. And that is what our group has done. And I understand that there is a request for more information, and I believe that more information can be available, but it will require the cooperation of the select board to take an action on some of those items. And, you know, there is another aspect of this, that we have a limited building season in Vermont, and we have an annual meeting that takes place in March that is required to take place by statute. So, you know, of course, everybody would love more time, but we also have people who are going to be looking for housing later this year who are looking for housing already. You know, you know, we kind of are where we are. And if we don't vote to move this forward, to have a town vote, I worry that we will miss other deadlines associated with funding that is available, specifically the funding that is targeted 80% of $54 million is targeted at Washington and Lamoille counties alone. We will never have an opportunity like this again. And if we don't have a project to move forward, I worry that we will miss it.
I'd like to speak. Time, calendar,
Yeah.
the seasons. They're all really players here in ways that are not convenient or pleasant to think about even. Yeah, I really want to value the digging, the research that you're bringing back to this board. And it is indeed a vulnerability that the only times we can discuss this are like right now and right here. And this is the first conversation we've had like this. And that's the way of things. You know, I think I'm holding the both and, I guess is what I'm trying to do. It's like holding the both and. We are under time constraints. This is like a precious opportunity and window to move forward. I don't know if what Alicia said is true, but if this is a large step forward for housing in this town. It would be. You know, what role, if any, does that $68 million earmarked for this county? Or this plus Lamoille County, regardless. There's a lot of money here that we can take advantage of for the benefit of this town and its like generational future. You know, you're bringing attention to, okay, this detail is not actually a detail. This is like a roadblock. And this detail is not a detail, but this is another roadblock. And so, you know, if the result of the ballot measure is that select board is offered then authority to move it forward or not. I mean, we are all in fact and information gathering season right now. Nothing about that is going to move quickly. We're going to continue to receive more information and do our own analysis and ask for expert analysis, third party to inform our way forward. Meanwhile, to get the ballot measure on the ballot that is like within days, that we need to make that happen. And so I guess I want to say that if it comes down to it, if the populace says yes, and to your question, Carl, about is the town in support of this? The only way to really know that is to put it to the vote. And then all of a sudden, the entire voting population of the town who's voting is going to tell us. And though, if we get a yes back, yes, we have access to this bond. And the information gathering between now and then leads us to a place of, oh, this is actually a no. Then that's new information. And I don't think any one of us would like plow forward through the no to like the 2.5 million obligation. And though, considering the time of the now of putting it to the vote while information comes in, we still have like the ability to put the brakes on. And I think that's really what I want to say.
I'm just wondering with that little sticky nugget that Peter brought up, but I was wondering about myself, is that not being ethical to buy, how do we say this, to buy from that person because the person works for the town and will be profiting.
We have to be really careful with that. I agree that that's,
Because that worries me that that piece is there and then other people are doing all this work and.
I just, and I see a couple, yeah. I just want to point out one thing on your point, that the population in 1980 or so is the same as it is now in this town. Costs have been going up, inflation's going up, so if we want to hold taxes down, we need more people living here paying taxes. So, between Goddard and this project, we're hopeful that that will happen. But I'm kind of like you are in terms of, as long as we always have the break on the project, I'd like to see it move ahead personally. And I know that Act 250 that you brought up is probably gonna slow it down a lot anyway, give time to get more information and answer questions. Yeah, go ahead, David.
Dave Kroll, do you really feel like the majority of Plainfield residents are gonna know what they're voting on in March?
Well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. They may
I mean,
not.
That's, you know, to put the question on the ballot for people to vote on, I don't feel like most people are really gonna know what they're getting into or what they're voting on.
I don't even think the select board knows what they're voting on.
Well, we don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
Well, that's
absolutely.
what I'm saying. How can you possibly put something on the ballot and say, we'll approve this unless you're gonna come back and say, after we approve it and we get more information, we're gonna have another townwide vote.
I got you, but you were first.
My
Name?
name's Elena,
So,
Norway.
Yeah.
And my question is there a time limit on the grant money that we are talking about? You know, worried about not being able to get if we don't do, like, what is the time limit on that grant money?
We're gonna know more about that. I'll know more tomorrow.
Maybe tomorrow.
I'll know more
Well,
tomorrow.
I mean, I
But
just.
it is
you know,
limited, it's limited. It will get allocated to other projects.
Right, but if we're
Yeah.
using that as a
Yeah.
pawn here, like.
Yeah, if we
You know,
don't,
in
if we
fear
don't
that we're
submit
gonna
a
lose out
project.
on this money, you know, I think we need more information on that too.
Mhm.
You know, I'm not gonna vote yes just because I'm worried about losing out on grant money, you know, and we're talking millions of dollars. And we know how much money this town needs because we're in trouble, you know? And so I feel like, I don't like it when that gets in there and I don't understand what the time is.
Mhm. Go ahead.
Karen Hatcher, I appreciate both what Peter offered and the heart with which you offered it. And Francis Rose, what you also said. I mean, I'm wondering how an article could be put on the warrant, the warning. It's different here in Vermont, the warning. What it could say that would signal something to the board that would allow more information gathering, that it would authorize the board a process, right? That the town would say, we're in favor of, we trust our board. We're in favor of the board gathering the information they need, all the questions, to be able to decide whether to secure the loan and move it forward or not. But I think because timing is what it is, and you only get one bite at this apple, right? You can't ask the voters to vote again another time, even if we had a special meeting, right? I don't know how that all works, but it seems to me that there could be a wording that, some kind of warning that would allow you to get what you want, Carl, which is to hear from the voters, and would authorize the board to take the next steps in their process to gather the information and have conversation with the voters about the project. So how can we? So I think there's a way, but it's a how can we do it so we don't miss the window and we still have a process to get the information.
Yeah. I think my concern is, and I've asked that question, I don't know, you know. I don't think we can do an advisory vote by Australian ballot. I don't think that's allowed. You know, and on the other hand, I think we are running the risk of putting something out there and giving bond authority that may not be there because we didn't follow the correct process, you know? The resolution being a piece of that. And therefore, it's like, you get a yes vote, but you didn't really get a yes vote legally.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put us in that position. Okay? And we don't have, and Carl and I have exchanged a couple of emails and trying to get independent counsel to be here, Eli proposed his thing, but he was working for the steering committee with the grant funds there, so they're the client, not us in
Do
this
we not have a
particular
town
case.
attorney?
We have a town attorney, but we were advised of another person who I called today who wasn't available. Who's a specialist in property transfers.
Yeah.
So that's who we would, if we had a lot more time, we would be talking to them, we'd be having them into a meeting, but we're just on a time frame here because of warnings and obvious notification of the public and all. So there was a hand up, I think.
Marion has this.
Marion?
I do just want to clarify that the conflict, which has been, and Rich Rubin was, he was going to be able to speak to this a little bit, who is a longtime attorney, offering his advice on that. And then also Eli, both of them said that as long as the town clerk recuses himself and is not involved in the transaction or has no decision-making authority, i.e. is not a member of the select board who is voting on this, that there is not a conflict. Because in small towns, these things do happen where people wear many hats. And as long as they state their conflict and they recuse themselves from the decision-making, that is, that's how that's normally handled. I'm happy, the language that Eli said in an email, which I'm happy to share with the select board, is the clerk should not be involved in this transaction at all as he has a financing interest in the outcome. And then he referred me to the new municipal code of ethics for specific details, which is the document that was just recently referenced. And rereading through Eli's email, which was forwarded again, it does seem like the resolution would need to be adopted at the same time for it to have the appropriate effect. I am happy, I'm sure Eli would welcome a phone call from any of you to discuss further, and I'm sorry that I didn't invite him to attend the meeting this evening. I didn't realize that it was going to be quite so technical.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would hope it would be technical since we're talking $2.5 million here, reading from the municipal code of ethics, which we are now mandated to follow. A municipal officer shall not, that's the town clerk or anybody else, shall not benefit from any contract entered into by the municipality and the officer, the officer's immediate family, or an associated business of the officer or the officer's immediate family, unless, one, the benefit is not greater than that of other individuals generally affected by the contract. There are no other individuals generally affected by this contract. Two, the contract is a contract for employment. No, it's not. Three, the contract was awarded through an open and public process of competitive bidding. No. Or four, the total value of the contract is less than $2,000. On its face, I don't think we can do this with the current person in the current office.
I mean, is there a way to just suggest that there's some kind of confirmation from council? Did anybody consult with the City of Leagues and Towns regarding the specifics?
League of Cities and Towns is deferring on the municipal code of ethics because they did not want it to pass. They lobbied against it in the legislature. And if you go to the Vermont Ethics Commission website, and I tried to do this today, you can submit a request for an opinion. They do not have to give you one, but you have to fill out a form and they will tell you in 5 days whether they will consider giving you an opinion. And so there is no way that we could get that done prior to making a decision. I try.
There has to be some method of recusal though, or some way, because you, in a small town, you can have these kinds of situations.
Not by what you just read.
No, and if you know, you want to go on and take the municipal ethics training, which many of the folks here in town have to. All the members of the Development Review Board, all of us,
I see.
all the listers, the town clerk, the town treasurer, the collector of taxes, you know, all the justices of the peace. You can go on there and take that, and they do recognize that there are, particularly in a small state like Vermont, but this is Vermont's law. Vermont knew that when they passed this law.
Would this be, excuse me, would this be the situation where we could decide not to do the deal because we've gotten confirmation? I mean, the words are pretty clear, but it is a small town and a small state. People have to own property who also choose to be on committees and boards. I don't know.
I mean, I from the training, they were very clear that when in doubt, ask.
Yeah.
And then this is an entire commission dedicated to the, you know, those offering the trainings.
Here's
and
the situation.
responding to the queries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, indeed, this is on its face. I mean, it's not for me or on me to assume anything about Bram.
No, it's not brand.
No, but like, for all we know, my point is, for all we know, Bram might recuse himself from his office, not even just this decision, but he could do that. I don't know I don't know. And so I just want to name that as a possibility in the room that hasn't been acknowledged.
Mhm.
That's
I mean,
true.
it's one of the steps that could happen that would totally change the picture, at
Yes,
least
it
in
would.
that reference. There's a lot of other questions, but that would be one there.
And
I
Yes,
just-
Karen, I'm sorry.
Karen Hatcher, not to come at this from left field, but it seems to me, that the primary issue is the $2.5 million bond loan. And at this point, right, to be able to make a move to put something on the ballot, right? What if, and Arian, I don't know that this is possible, but we'll have a conversation tomorrow. But what if the community block grant makes the funding of this other than needing a loan for 2.5 million? What if that funding could cover the project?
Mhm.
And I don't know that that's true. Would that then still allow a process for this project to answer questions? And, you know, it seems like we're hooked because we need a decision about this money, this particular funding. And I just wonder about, and maybe I'm just, you know, maybe this will never come to pass, but it seems to me that if we could put a $10 million proposal through on the money that is available, perhaps we could go at this another way. And I don't know that, but I'll ask that question. Because I think that could allow the project to stay in play. And we could still have a process.
The tough part of this is the borrowing of the money,
I get it.
right? I mean, that's the,
Yeah.
and what you're saying is if we didn't have to warn it that way, you know, I don't know if there's,
And I don't know.
I don't know if it's worth
Find
anything
out.
if you do that.
Just met from George.
I would rather have a lot of the unanswered questions answered before putting it to a vote, because I think that would increase the chances of it passing.
I agree. I think you're right. People need the information, but we have 5 days, right?
Yeah.
Well, we don't, you know,
To put something on the warning.
I don't know what off the top of my head, what the law is about, you know, if we don't put the vote now, we can always call a special meeting for a vote on a bond. We may have to call a special meeting for a vote on the zoning, you know, because that has its own issues, but you know, we can always do that. You know, we're not bound by doing this on town meeting day. We are bound, if we want to do it on town meeting day, by the restrictions of the calendar and time and the knowledge that people want at this point, but it's not all or nothing.
Exactly.
It's got the same thing.
Go ahead, Doug.
Peter,
Doug,
did you submit a question to this board for the state for this piece that you just read for?
No, I tried to, and as I was going through the application, when it said, we'll let you know in 5 days whether we will take your request under consideration. And I said, I'm not gonna have an answer, and so I just stopped and went back to work.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm wondering if it makes sense to ask that question, even though it's outside the time frame of the town meeting, so that we can find out whether what we think that paper says is what it really says.
Oh, I think that's a wise move. I mean, we're sitting here without legal counsel, talking about a bond bigger than our town budget. And some other questions, Act 250, you know, can we do this, you know, et cetera. And, you know, the land use attorney that, you know, Carl tried to get in touch. I mean, we try to do that and, you know, you run out, you know, I'm not available, I can't do it. It's like, well,
here's
the calendar hits us.
Here's the timing that bothers me, and it's very more emotional than logical, maybe. We have not changed our population in 40 years. We've lost 11% of our grand list, according to our listers, because of the flood. We have vacant houses along here on School Street that are going to fall down sooner or later. And I just worry about our tax base. I worry about drawing business into town. Our Cam Risley, who tried to sell his business, had a buyer. The buyer couldn't find housing. He backed out. I mean, that's what happens. If you're a business person, you want to start an ice cream shop or a cobbler shop or something, you want to know that there's a population that will support you and will start to build. Now, there's great high hopes for Goddard. I've had number of conversations with Michael Davidson. He's a businessman. He's going to do what he can to, you know, trim his taxes as much as possible. It'll be more than Goddard paid, but we can't count on that either for rescuing us. We need vitality. And I think the whole purpose of what Arian's 17 volunteer group is doing is trying to get the community back, get it feeling viable again. And they're a bunch of volunteers, just like Karen's group is, learning as we go. But I just really would like to see something happen. And I don't know how this could be written so that it you know, I know people are going to be very worried about not having all the information. What they taught us in engineering school is you never have enough time, you never have enough information. And so you still have to do things. And that's sort of where I'm at. Yes.
So, my name's Elena. What if you end up putting it on there with for a bond, 2.5 million, and it scares people? You know, they just read it for the first time and they say, you know, like you said, it's more than our town budget. You know, does that turn people off for the opportunity to do it later when there's more information and, you know, more people would be on board if they knew what was going on?
That would be ideal. Absolutely. That would be ideal. I think the worry is that there'll be funding opportunities lost, that there'll be the folks who maybe were displaced, who wanted to come back, might not be able to because they've worked
I'm just
something
saying
else.
the lack of information now and putting it on there, people might vote it down.
Yeah.
Whereas if you waited and you had more information and you had a special meeting and then you voted on it, it might get passed, where it might not pass now because people don't have enough information. I'm just throwing it out there, because it just came to mind.
fair enough, yeah.
Aaron set his hand up and Ann also.
Okay, go ahead,
And I
Aaron.
think Ann can go ahead. That's fine.
Okay,
Oh,
You're muted, Ann.
Ann?
Okay, got it. Sorry, I was trying to find the buttons. So I guess I think I hate this urgency because I think that there are some really good legal points that we want to do right. If we pass this and it's wrong, you know, we didn't know all this stuff. We didn't get the legalese down. You know, Peter's bringing up some really important points. We've got stuff about Act 250, and we've got stuff about all this kind of thing going on. So one is getting our ducks in a row and our I's dotted and our T's crossed. And this is just step one. There's a whole logistical thing following, which is now our town, which is staffed by volunteers and who are run very thin, now have to be having real estate transactions all the time, which involve a lot of paperwork and a lot of time. And I don't know how even that's going to happen either. So I think that more information will be more likely to get people to know what they're voting about and vote well, and vote properly. Not just like, oh my gosh, 2.5 million, I haven't, I know that it's very hard to get information out to the townspeople. I have been trying it myself with like, okay, we have money for grants for people who are affected by the flood, and it's like pulling teeth to get people to apply for free money. So it must be really hard to get all this information out to people in a way that they can understand. And I think that Arian's group has been doing an amazing job trying. But I think there are people who have never heard of this and who are going to be voting. And they're going to be voting by Australian ballot. They won't be at the town meeting talking about this. They will be seeing this on a piece of paper in front of them, and they've never seen it. And I think that it's just, I don't know that people know what I mean, I know some people know exactly what they're voting on, but there'll be a lot of people who don't know what they're voting on. And I think that we want them to know what they're voting on because we want a real decision. So,
Okay.
if we can loosen up the time frame, that would be great.
Well, we could wait till next year. I mean, that's
No, I think
obviously.
this special meeting thing somebody was just talking about might.
Aaron, Arian had a thought on that.
I mean, I think, if having a special meeting is a lot of things to organize on, but it is, we are likely going to miss the construction season for this year. If if the town votes it down, we're going to miss it. I think the important thing to keep in mind here, and you've made public statements against this village expansion, so I do think it's a little bit complicated for you to advocate for this, that if we hold this vote, it keeps the possibility open, and it's incumbent upon us and anybody else who supports this project to make sure that questions are answered and people know what they're voting about. If the committee does not vote for this to proceed this evening, this project runs the very risk of dying in this room tonight. And if we vote to pat it on the ballot, then we hold the possibility open that it could move forward. We can put all kinds of caveats on the language. The ultimate authority for anything to move forward rests with the select board. If there are unanswered questions, the select board can stop this process at any time. There is nothing that is a given if we vote for this project to move forward this evening. However, if we don't do that through a process of delay, then the project effectively may be over.
In the stack, Alicia.
Alicia.
Yeah, hi, Alicia Weiss again. Just for, the knowledge of the room, I did start out against the project. I am no longer against the project. I think there are a lot of really good things about it. I am concerned about, as I said, the pace and the scope, or the scope given the pace, okay? To speak to, I also understand the urgency of getting people housed and building season. To speak to some of what Arian said, is there a way to craft language? If there was a feeling that something needs to happen in town meeting, is there language that could be crafted that is useful? If not, I really think town, a special meeting with some disseminated information coming from the select board, which would have a certain authority to it, could be very, very useful. Also, I also don't want to see something voted down because people don't know what they're voted for, or look at 2.5 and say, oh my God, that's so much more. What's going to happen to me? I mean, I remember this town when you couldn't fit in, there were too many people to fit in it. And I'd like to see that type of activity again. That's all.
Wanda?
Unmute. What happens if it's on the ballot at town meeting and it gets voted down? Either because people are opposed or more likely because they really don't think they have enough information. Is a vote against this project, the town's involvement at the town meeting, is that the end of the project? And if that's so, I would certainly be in favor of having a special meeting called when people would have more information and be more likely to vote for the expansion project, which I personally am in favor of.
That's pretty much what I was saying too. Right? Yeah. Just make sure that
Karen?
Yeah, I'm Karen Hatcher. I just wonder if there's a way to do, if it doesn't get onto the ballot, if we couldn't consider a special meeting, maybe, but not like so far along, but maybe like May. It doesn't have to be, it could just be, it doesn't have to be a long period, and maybe we don't have to miss the whole construction season. But we could spend a few weeks getting the information and plan a special meeting and have the vote, but have all the information by that point. Because it feels like the board's divided, and maybe there isn't a one way to go, but it feels like if we had the time to answer some of the key questions and maybe plan for a special meeting to get the town to weigh in, that might be a good way to go.
My observation is that both the velocity of the feeling coming at the town, at the board, at the working group for the village expansion project, that that velocity has something to do with the bottleneck of information. And that's real. And maybe that is, yeah, maybe right now, maybe I feel that is hampering the project. It is hampering the effort, that the bottlenecks of information, which are many and varied, and each have their own like unique stories about them, that it does seem to be creating a scene that is creating more and more misgiving, doubt, wonder. Yeah, I find myself curious too, Karen, about what is this scene 2 months on, minus, to your point, Peter, about there's nothing about this project that needs to be married to the town meeting day. And what does uncoupling it do for the access that this town and this board is like wanting to feel better about this project that many, many, many people truly think is generally a good idea?
Did we get an
I
answer
just
to the
want-
question of what happens if it gets voted down? Did we get to that?
I'm not sure any of us are carrying that information. I wonder if the ballot question is about the bond measure. And then all of a sudden, if this $68 million of federal money, if any of that lands in our town, then, you know, 2.5 is all that's being asked for. 68 is like a
But
lot.
if we say no to the 2.5 million at town meeting day, where do we go from there?
You'd be saying no to the bond.
That,
No to the bond. Okay.
yeah,
That's the only question.
Okay,
I think a bigger question is for Ariane's group.
yeah.
They're volunteers who I know they've been working hard. And, that's what you'd be saying, no to.
Yeah,
yes.
that's what I could say, it's like, well, would we continue to meet and do, I mean, I know we may. But I think there's momentum now. And the momentum is driven by, yeah, we wanna help people out, we want people who will otherwise leave because they need to go somewhere to be here.
Yeah.
We wanna give them that chance, and I know it is a really fast time frame, but I guess I just keep coming back to we can vote to allow the select board to consider the bond, you know, to take out the bond, but the select board will have to deliberate. The select board will not decide that without information and input from the town.
Yeah.
If I understand correctly.
That's correct, and we'd write it down. I mean, I would write it down as the chair. And assure that we would have that, but it sounds like the $2.5 million is the thing that somebody's gonna look at that and say, no way. And I think it's personally a shame because I wish more people in town really understood everything, but we don't understand everything. And the committee and the group doesn't understand everything yet. Working on it.
No, but I think the group's momentum will continue if there is something to continue for.
Yeah. I should also mention that besides the folks who might fund a project like this and other things, they want to see town support. And a down vote is going to really hurt that. So maybe a special meeting where we have more information and more likely to get a plus vote is better. I'm just throwing ideas out.
Speaks, but I wonder if there's a reason why it needed to be on the town meeting.
Because it's the only chance you have for the town to weigh in, basically.
Without a special meeting.
And also, I should mention that Arian's hooked in with Habitat for Humanity, who are interested in buying sites on this conceived lot. There's another group. Downstreet is also interested in a number of lots that they would build housing on. So, but these organizations won't do it without support from the town, and they won't do it. And they would certainly do it for a lot less than a contractor would do it.
And the sale of the lots pays for the bond. That's
Yeah.
the piece of information, the sale of lots.
I don't know how we could craft this so we could get that part of it accomplished.
Yeah.
And get the town to say, we would like more housing in town. We'd like to have this happen. But I think that 2.5 million is just go ahead.
I wanted to second something you said, Carl, about the stable population or static population, if you will, probably better word than stable. And making the place attractive for someone to want to not just move to, but put a business here. It's the same issue we have with this bridge and blinking light project and no other way in and out.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long that 100-year bridge is gonna stand, and the dam, apparently, we just heard, is damaged. And that's gonna be another issue, but we need to make it attractive. We need to increase that tax base to have anybody's vision of a future in this town. And, I think there's some resistance to, the town being a real estate agent. I have absolutely no philosophical objection at all to a town investing in infrastructure to attract business.
I mean, that happens all the time.
That happens all the time. There's a different thing when we're the real estate agent. That's a different, ball of wax.
It is different. Yeah.
And so, it's just one of many things that I think with a little more time, we could make a much more tangible and attractive proposal that would be more likely to succeed in a vote.
Yep. I'm sorry. Ann's hands up. Sorry, Ann, go ahead.
You're muted, Anne, still?
Yes, go ahead,
So
Ann.
I want to talk about, I mean, I want to talk to Arian calling me out on that. I actually am not against this project. All I've been asking about is for information since the beginning. I've never been against this project. I just haven't felt like I had enough information. And every single thing I put out in public has been, can we get more information, please? And so I really don't think that I'm not against it. I'm actually started PACT because I think we need more people. And
Pause, and please, sorry, this is like, we are so behind schedule on this
okay,
agenda.
all I wanted to say is, I don't like being called out in public for something that's not true.
Okay, thank you. We understand. Is there,
Maybe I'll share a deep breath.
You don't.
all right, is there a way to craft the language? I mean, we are meeting next Friday on zoning. If we had language that all of us agreed to, we could get it so it was on town meeting. But I don't think it's gonna be $2.5 million bond. I don't know what it's gonna be. But we wanna show folks who are watching this town, a lot of folks watching this town, that we are progressive in the sense that we are thinking ahead, we're resilient, we're flexible, and we're thinking for the future. And so anything we would write up that could be presented to the voters on town meeting day would have to answer some of those questions to me. I think we are. I think this town is pretty amazing, but it's a scary number. It's not guaranteed number, but it's a scary number. Yeah.
Karen Hatcher, so I hear what you're saying, and you have another opportunity to meet, right, Friday?
We have to on Friday
to.
in order to
Yeah.
put the zoning thing
Yeah,
on the ballot.
we have warnings to get out. Yeah.
So, perhaps there's a way to word it that has, that isn't only about the bond. It's not a bond issue, it's a funding issue, that board will seek funding, will explore funding.
Yeah, I like
up to
that.
The 2.5 million through a variety of sources, gives you a little more flexibility. Then we can find other ways maybe to fund this project,
Mhm.
but a way to put that before the voters to say that the board is empowered to seek funding, to explore funding sources, to support expanded housing in the town.
And it could end up in a bond
And
vote.
it could end up in a bond, but not necessarily. And so maybe there's a way to do this more broadly and find that language and then put that before the voters, because then you'll get what you need to hear them say, and then you still have process to be able to find the money and answer the questions.
There's a reason you're the wordsmith, Karen. I like that a lot. And if we could do that, I think I definitely support that. Who's up there? Yeah.
Don Fancher.
Oh, yes. Dawn?
Okay, hi, Don Fancher. Just really quick. I hear people talking about the need for the town. One of the reasons for this, for the town to signal that the town has interest in this project for, pursuing other funding sources. And I know that you can't do an advisory vote by Australian ballot. And there are problems with in-person town meetings because they're not very accessible. But the fact of the matter is they do exist. So I was just wondering if, it's my understanding that there can be advisory votes from the floor on town meeting. So I was just bringing that up as maybe a possibility for if you're looking for another way for the town to signal interest in supporting the project in general. I don't know. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. You're saying we could do an advisory vote?
Yeah, if you look at the draft articles, the last article is any other advisory vote. That's standard. You can bring up anything under business. It's advisory.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I'm after. Because we don't, We don't know what we would do.
It sounds like
yet.
something more firm was what Karen was describing here, which is
Yeah,
a directive for us to pursue. You
Yeah.
know, if that's,
Because
and I don't
that
know what the
signals-
language is. I don't think we're gonna find it tonight.
But that signals to the funders, right, that you're serious, that you're gonna pursue. You know, so,
we're interested in housing, which the governor's all over.
yeah, so you're just,
We're interested in kids in school, which the school's all over.
Just to name it, to borrow money, this is from Arian, for more than 5 years, it requires a vote by Australian ballot per state law.
the borrow.
That's correct.
So if the town got to the point where they were gonna borrow, then that would be a special meeting to be.
That would
able
be a
to-
special meeting.
To authorize the town to borrow that money. But at this point, what you're getting is a signal that the town's in favor of the project and in favor of the board finding the money.
Mhm.
You know, exploring options for how to fund it. That's what you're doing now. And you can put that on the ballot and you're not
Mhm.
jeopardizing
We,
anything.
and we can get help from the League of Cities and Towns in doing the proper wording on that, so it's a
I think that will work.
substantive
I
vote.
think it would work too. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I think, what do you think on the committee or the group that you're with?
Yeah.
Paula, while you're standing there. I mean, is that something that would be enough to keep some enthusiasm going? Because we,
Did you guys read that?
I just read it aloud. Do you want to
Yeah.
read it again?
Okay, no, I was spacing out, so what are you asking me?
oh, I'm just trying to get a sense if you're, if we could get a reading from the town that they're supporting this project, would your volunteer group continue at some level? Or likely continue?
There's people, I can't speak for everyone on the group, there's some people who are working really, really hard, and I think.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I think we're more likely to keep the momentum going if there's something to go for, but I think if it ends tonight. Personally, I don't think I'm gonna be like rah, I'm gonna feel pretty bummed.
I wouldn't blame you.
You mean end though, by saying that they won't put the bond on the
Yeah,
ballot?
it's like cause if you don't do some, if we don't put it out on the Australian ballot, or if we don't make it a discussion at town meeting, which I realize we can't, that doesn't get us anywhere, but. If we don't say, we wanna do something, and we wanna move it forward, that is the end of this, as it stands right now, like.
Yeah, but that's not.
But did you hear what Karen?
But that's not what we're
Yeah,
saying,
I
right?
know,
So-
yeah, I know, I said, if not that.
Yeah, I think we're trying to find the middle ground that is getting us what we want. And keeping the door open and allowing us to put on the brakes anytime we need to or want to. But we will need to gather more information.
Yeah, I think that's understood and has been stated pretty clearly that everyone's aware that there's been no way to get all the information together at this point.
Yep.
I'm gonna acknowledge that delay is a tactic. Delay often leads to death of projects and ideas. I want to speak that truth to all present.
I would like to have the week that we have, or a few days we have, to try to work on some language that would be something we could bring to the voters, that will get us the sense of the community's support, which I think is pretty good, but this is gonna scare them, and if we scare enough people and they vote no, then that really scares them, yeah.
So I think the middle ground here is pumping the brakes at all, but not actually delaying the progress of this project. And is that possible with all the channels that we're negotiating simultaneously? I'm not an expert on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the reality of Act 250, of just getting engineering studies done, of, a lot of time-consuming parts of the project. I know it's breaking Arian's heart because he's so committed to seeing it. But I believe that there's gonna be delays that are built in, whether you want it or not. If we just take a little more time and then talk about calling a special meeting if we gather enough information. Maybe
that's
get
not-
full funding.
But, oh, that's not what Karen Hatcher, that's not what we were saying. We're
Yeah.
not saying special meeting now. What we're saying is rewording
This.
rewording this.
Yeah,
Right? To be able to then get more information, but you have options for funding that can go forward.
yeah,
And then if there is a need to borrow and bond, then that's a special meeting.
that would be the special meeting.
Right? That's what you need.
But you're
Like,
saying there might be other ways. We don't know.
could be,
We don't know,
especially
but
with the CDBG.
okay.
grants. Yeah.
I think we should.
There's one more hand up.
Oh, one more hand. Yeah.
Colin. It's Alicia.
Alicia, go ahead.
Okay, I think I'm hearing two, possibly three different things. One is, let's phrase this in a way that gives
Thank you, Sheriff.
gives us a vote on whether to explore the select board can explore avenues of funding to move this project forward. The first thing I heard was craft language to give the select board authority to explore funding to increase housing. Those are two different proposals. I have, and I don't know that they're mutually exclusive, but I have heard questions about the project that are not just about the funding. So I wonder, I just think it's good to be clear whether it's an initiative to go forward with looking for funding for new housing or an approval of this particular project, because they're two different things. So somebody needs to be clear before.
I think we should continue with the language for the expansion of the East Village or whatever it's called, okay? Because expansion of the village could also be Goddard, so I think we're talking about a specific project here, and I think we have to reference that.
Yeah.
And I think we need to move on.
Yeah.
If you want guidance on it, you have to be specific.
Yeah.
Okay. Carl, we could come back Friday night and not have discovered the perfect language, and we're back here and a motion could be made to do this. That is within the possibilities.
Yeah, that's possible. I'm just watching time and knowing that it's way over time already and wondering, we're not gonna have language now, so
Yeah, I think
I think in the next couple of days, we should work on that. And then address it as briefly as you can Friday, because Friday's a full night too. Thanks, Sharon.
Good night, Karen.
Okay. I think we're gonna leave it there and address it again Friday.
You have to rewarn the meeting or to have it on there on Friday or?
It's an emergency meeting that we already have put the agenda together for. I will modify the agenda to address this in the beginning of it. And then we're gonna deal with zoning.
Okay.
And planning commission. Discuss, okay. We have to discuss the temporary town office help and compensation, which we've.
What about the purchase and sale agreement?
For
The village expansion.
That's the next thing on the agenda.
the purchase and sale agreement, okay?
Do we have something?
I don't, do you?
I think this is Arian's piece. Arian was going to map the.
Is there any update, the purchase and sale area?
The consideration was, and Rich Rubin was supposed to speak to this, but he had to go, is that ultimately the town is the one who would need to negotiate an option with Bram and Erica. And Rich had offered some guidance on that, which was to hire an attorney as a third party to negotiate on behalf of the town. He had a specific recommendation, Brian.
Yeah, I talked to his office today, yep. So that was his logic, so we could do that, but that means that we don't have any answer right now.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that in order for there to be a public answer to the question of how much does the land cost, the price does need to be negotiated by the town. That nobody else has authority to do that. And so what would be a proper way? And he could speak to other conflict of interest questions that the board may have as an attorney, that represents the board.
Well, I have a call in to him and I'll talk to him when he gets back to me.
Okay. Yeah, I think, so the consideration would be if once you have a chance to speak with him, would the board enter into a process with him? The question to the board, would the board enter a process with him to negotiate an option so that the price is actually firm and legally binding, so that that number can be publicly reported? Because until that time, there is no way to publicly report it.
Right, understood.
Thank you, Aaron.
Okay, thanks. You want to talk about the temporary office?
Yes, this basically is a request that came from, the staff at the office for help. And, we went out and it was suggested that we try and find maybe a town clerk who had recently retired and could help out. And, I called Carol Dawes, a former Barry city clerk, and who's doing some consulting work for the city of Barry and Berlin, I think was the other town that she's doing. And she was available. And so Carl and I and Bram met with her and we came up with a letter of agreement. And basically she, would be hired, I think it's at $40 an hour as an independent contractor, for, not to exceed 90 hours. So $3,600 tops, basically to take us through town meeting and make sure that we're handling all the elections stuff properly. And that is, the articles, that we're discussing for the warning, the fact that, the ballot, which we have a mock-up of, today was the deadline for people to submit petitions, so we couldn't print it until today. And in fact, we have to wait till the warning for zoning and the village project language are proper to finish that. But that has to be posted next Sunday. And so that's the very last day. And so she's making sure all that's done, and then she will handle all of the absentee ballot requests that come in. There's stuff has to get into the computer, the mail has to get answered, the mail has to get processed, et cetera. And there's just not the bandwidth at the town office to do that with Bram's situation at this point. And so, and Kristen is leaving there, and there's somebody new, Hillary has she started?
Today.
Today's her first day. So, we have new staff there. And so Carol is a very experienced person, and she agreed to do it. And so,
and we have a letter of agreement, and we just need to get authorization to sign it.
I would move that we give Carl the authority to sign the letter of agreement with the terms as described.
I second that.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 And she will work through town meeting, including all the filings of the results with the proper authorities and follow up and et cetera. And so.
I
Okay,
feel
great.
grateful to have her support in the office.
She's really ready to jump in too. It's great. And she's perfect for it. Get us through that. Okay. Temporary, okay, adopt municipal ethics policy. I don't think we need to talk much about that. We do need to designate a select board member to the State Ethics Commission. I'm offering myself, but if somebody else is happy to do it.
I welcome you to be the liaison. There was a technical piece about they are, I think, expecting us to formally adopt the state policy.
Oh, that's correct.
Yes.
Supersedes the local municipal policy.
Yes.
The new state ethics law says that, and Plainfield has had a conflict of interest policy since 2019.
Yeah.
And it touches many of the points that are in the state's policy, but we must do at least what the new state law says.
Yeah.
And we can go further. We can always do that at future meetings if we so decide.
But we can adopt.
But we can adopt this, and the other option would be to basically hire an attorney to do a crosswalk between our current policy and the new one to see if we're, the easiest thing is to just take the state policy, and we have to post it up on our website. So, so we have some other ministerial duties, and we mentioned the training before and stuff. So, but we have to appoint a liaison by the end of this month and this policy. So
This is definitely a path of least resistance to adopt state policy.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely the current policy that everybody's following.
So I would move that we adopt the state policy and replace our current policy and approve Carl as the liaison to the State Ethics Committee.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Four, approve, one absent. Okay, let's do together. And then, I don't know about the designate a select board liaison to the Hazard Mitigation Committee. You had an interest in this, didn't you, Patty?
I did. I would be willing to take that on.
Okay, I think we need to talk to our friend, Michael.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, Patty, if you would consider sharing that.
Oh, sure.
I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
Hey.
Maggie Baird, Chair of the Housing Mitigation Committee.
Oh, okay.
To have. We did, until Brad became town clerk, when he was on the select board, he was our, chair. Or our select board.
There's a liaison. We like to have each person on the select board kind of watch over certain subjects, you know.
Right.
And so, various people have taken on different things. But you'd like to be part of that as well? I mean, you both,
Yeah, I mean,
both could do it.
I think we both have children.
Yeah, okay.
And so I think double coverage assists
great.
there
Sure.
being
That's
more
idea,
consistent
yeah.
coverage within the hazard mitigation.
Uh,
So I think
I don't know
I can make the
I
proposal.
guess we need a motion to do this.
Yeah, that
Job sharing.
that Patty and I
Yeah.
both be named liaisons from the select board to the hazard mitigation committee.
Yeah, so if one isn't available, you have somebody else you can go to, Maggie. That's great.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Can I ask her about the dam?
How long do you want to wait here? Tony? Let's see. Yeah, they can bend your ear on the dam, so.
Give me your phone number.
Appoint Laura Brill to the Hazard Mitigation Committee.
Right to me on.
I propose the appointment of Laura Brill to the hazard mitigation committee.
Yeah.
Okay, we have
Wait,
a,
a discussion?
No.
Well, I have a question because of the next item coming up.
Oh.
Is this a position that has a term? You know, we've been appointing people to things and we have not been paying attention to
with
whether
the
they
terms,
are
yeah.
terms and stuff. And as we've been preparing the report for town meeting, we have a lot of cleanup work to do that
Okay.
hasn't been paid attention to for lots of our town
Fair question.
commissions and
Yeah.
committees. So do you know?
Laura, in fairness, is not being named to commissioner, but to just membership on the commission.
Yeah, it's just membership at will, so, we don't have terms.
But
Thank you.
commissioners, though, is another story, perhaps. Peter, it's a good question.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. Commissioner should, but we're.
Okay,
Okay, we're gonna,
Oh, I made the proposal to.
yeah, we have a
appoint Laura
motion.
Brill to the hazard mitigation committee. Is there a second?
Okay, we have a motion and second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And she is with you.
She was here.
Up here, okay. And then we have an appointments of Lydia Vitale to a 2-year term as cemetery commissioner and appointment of Scott Bennett to a 1-year term on the cemetery commission. Can we get a motion for those? two?
They're both being named as cemetery commissioners. Oh, I guess,
There are 2 of them, yeah,
okay, thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, they're different terms.
Great.
we appointed them last meeting, not knowing that we had to appoint to specific terms.
Oh.
So this is a cleanup.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a cleanup motion.
Proposal to
Yeah.
name Lydia Vitale to the 2-year term as cemetery commissioner and Scott Bennett to a 1-year term as cemetery commissioner.
I move that, I second that.
Okay, and we'll vote on that, and it's, all those in favor, say aye.
I just a point of information,
Mhm.
that appointment is good until town meeting day.
Oh,
And I think both of them have submitted petitions to be on the ballot for the
All right.
spots. That's what happened. It's like the same thing would happen with your select board position.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, I wasn't sure I had to run again, but I do. so.
Again, we're trying to clean up here. so.
Yeah. Speaking of cleanup, I don't have the minutes of draft of January 13th. We're getting down to the bottom here, folks.
I did not see them either.
I didn't see them. I'm gonna suggest we wait on that and put that in the next meeting. Regular meeting and approval of warrants. We probably should have a motion for that so we can keep things moving.
Make a proposal.
We can
to-
do both, I think.
To approve accounts payable, 2 warrants dated January 10th, one dated January 13th, one dated January 17th, one dated January 22nd, and 2 dated January 23rd. Approve those accounts payable as well as payroll, January 16 and 23, 2025.
And we all have signed them, and I did count them. There, you just moved 9 items, and there are 9 items in there,
Yeah.
so.
Thank you, Peter.
So we get a second?
I second that.
And all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, our next meeting is Friday night. Our regular meeting will be, I believe, the 10th of February.
And you're gonna correct the notice for Friday.
I'm gonna correct the notice for Friday.
And just to name this piece about, we discussing and offering final approval on all of the articles
Oh,
for the town
yes,
meeting
thank you.
warning.
Yeah,
Thank
you were gonna just tell us where we were at.
Yeah, well, we have, and let me just get that document here. We've been having a tracking document. This has to get put in the printed town report, but also the articles for warning. Here we go. Since we last looked at this, we have gotten the water and wastewater budget numbers. The gross numbers are in there. We still have Article 2, which is the zoning, which we'll get to on Friday.
Right.
And Article 3, which was the placeholder for village expansion. So
Yeah.
we'll have that on Friday.
We'll have that on Friday. Okay.
The only other thing that is in here is I have not gotten the dates for Article 18, which is the dates to collect taxes.
Oh, okay.
I've asked him a couple of times, and I don't know if, Josh, are you
No.
here?
Josh is, oh,
Or
He
is
said
that,
he's
is
here.
that, is that his computer?
No, Josh is,
Oh.
is that Josh? Josh, are you taking questions right now?
I mean, we're gonna have an article
Yeah.
like this, we can fill
We
in,
can-
we can fill in the dates. The other thing I had asked you folks to look at is we have 5 articles that create reserve funds.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, we named the funds and we know the amounts from our budget as just to whether the language, the purpose language looks good to you all.
Yeah, I'm gonna read it again, but so far it does.
Agreed, same.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get-
Okay.
like Josh says, I'll get the dates prior to, almost there, prior to Friday.
Okay,
Thank you,
great.
Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. Thanks for catching that.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that. Okay. I don't know, I think we need a motion to adjourn, don't you?
Or at least recess for a few minutes.
just an aside, just for everyone to know, Plainfield School is closed tomorrow because of illness.
No.
Because of illness.
Yeah. It's closed
Respiratory.
tomorrow. People, it just said because of illness.
Yeah, they lost a bus driver, I know to illness. It's been a.
School tomorrow.
So you're busy tomorrow again.
Yeah, yeah.
Do we get a motion?
Motion to adjourn at, what time is it? 8:38.
Yeah.
I'll second
Eric,
that.
thank you so much for getting that stuff in the paper.
No problem.
All those in favor?
So fast, in favor, sorry.
Aye.
Aye, okay,
I'm gonna
we're
take
adjourned.
care.
8:35.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thanks for the input, everybody.
This-
Thank you for allowing
Hey,
the debate
so
to
pleased
go
meet
as
you
it
all.
did. I mean, it's an extra, 40 minutes.
I knew it was gonna